Hey, spa owner, and welcome to the SBA Business Podcast, where we talk all about spa strategy, profit, and automation. This is a podcast for spa owners who want to build a business that pays you well, runs without you, and grows with intention. I'm Amanda, a spa owner and licensed esthetician. Let's turn your spa into the business you always knew it could be. Before we dive in, I want to let you know about something that is really exciting that I'm going to be doing for the rest of 2026. I am hosting live masterclasses twice a month from now, which is by the time this goes out, it's July, through the end of the year of 2026. And I would love it if you would join me there. I'm going to be covering some major topics that I hear from a lot of other spa owners, and I get asked these things the most. Things like the first steps to hiring your first esthetician, how to get more clients, how to raise your prices, so many other things that come up that seem like really big pain points for a lot of spa owners that come really easily and naturally to me. So I want to share those things with you, and each of the master classes will be an hour long. I will have time at the end for a Q&A, and it's completely free. So you really have nothing to lose. It's an hour of your time, and I'm hoping that you get so much value out of it. So make sure you grab your spot. You can click on the link down below, or you can even head over to my website, amandaluisaconsulting.com. And there's a button at the top, a really big button that says Live Masterclass. Click on that, and it will bring up every single class that I'm offering, and you can register for one of them, for all of them. You can attend all of them. Everything is fully free and available to you. So I wanted to make sure that you knew about that before I got into today's episode. So let's jump into that episode, and I hope to see you live on one of those masterclasses. Hi, Pamela. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited because today we're going to be talking about the vocabulary and the terms that are commonly used in meta ads. And I think this is going to be really helpful for a lot of listeners because even as you and I are having these conversations, we're starting to use more of the lingo, and the deeper we get into it, the more it can start to sound like a completely different language, right? And the purpose that I want to come to the table with for this podcast is to empower the listener, the spa owner listening, with the knowledge needed to be able to at least be a little deadly when having a conversation about ads in general. And so the goal today, I would just love to kind of go over some commonly used terms or words that I hear often, and just honestly just have a conversation about it, what they mean, what they can be used for. And I think also it's important to make a note that these things are changing all the time. Like, they're not set in stone. The terms are constantly changing. The importance of the terms are always changing. So we can
Sorry
go
about
from
that.
there. It's okay. This is real life. There are dogs and cats all over the place here. It's all good. So let's just jump right in with one of the most commonly used words or terms that I hear when I'm talking with you or just when I'm listening to other podcasts, and that is campaigns, or maybe it's campaign slash ad set slash ad, and what the difference is between those and why we need to understand maybe like the hierarchy of them before we like even dive into starting with ads.
Yeah, it's essentially like the framework for running ads, and especially with Meta. I'm not an expert in TikTok advertising. My forte is definitely in Meta, in the Meta world, but I've heard, unless things have changed, that the TikTok advertising setup is similar. And so this is like derivative of just like marketing even outside of like meta campaigns or meta ads. And so I'd say like meta ads is like a catch-all term for like what you're doing when you're spending money on ads, not necessarily boosting, but getting inside the ads manager and creating campaigns. And so campaigns are just kind of like I kind of think of it as like a binder, like campaign is like the binder that you're keeping um, this like project inside of. And so a campaign usually is where you can kind of set your objective of what you want um, to happen in the campaign. So you're setting the objective for what exactly for spa owners, it's typically like acquiring leads if you were looking to bring in clients into your business. So usually at that point, you're setting up like a leads campaign. And your objective is to setting up to get like the most leads or more qualified leads. And then nestled within that campaign is the ad set. Usually we call it the ad set level, and then after that, kind of like tearing down from the ad set level, or rather like nestled into the ad set level are the ads. And so the ads are targeted to what you've chosen in the ad set level. And then the campaign is everything that all of that is going on inside of, and that's the ultimate objective lead. So anyways, so getting back to that, campaign is kind of like I think it's like the binder that it's like of the project, and that's your ultimate objective. And then you're kind of like outlining from there how you're going to reach your campaign objective.
Okay. Like a binder, you mean like for school, like a notebook
Yeah,
binder. Yeah.
yeah. And I imagine, because even the ads manager, I know this is silly and maybe this works well for visual learners, like the ads manager has tabs across it. And I always think about like, okay,
Oh,
so like this is my project and these are the tabs, the different tabs that we're keeping.
oh, in the binder.
Yeah. And so I
That's
would just
great.
say the campaign is like your overall objective. And now you can have different campaigns going at the same time with different objectives. You can also, so that's how everything kind of stays organized. And that's how you can create like your custom ads management.
Okay.
And so you can have different objectives at different times. Or you can have one campaign and have different testing different audiences. So then you'd have a few different audiences inside your ad tab, and then in
Okay.
or your ad set tab. And then same thing, you could be testing multiple ads until you find something that's working better. And depending on like your budget or depending on like how big your audience is, will depend on like how many things are going inside of those tabs. But that is just what it looks like from the ads manager view. Is that you've got like three different tabs, and one's going to show you all your campaigns. And if you click into a certain campaign, it'll show you all your ad sets. And then when you click into that, it'll show you all the ads that either have been
Okay.
running, weren't running within that campaign. But like at the top, at the very top of all these like tabs is the campaign level. And that's where you set your objective of what you want, ultimately, the outcome from your ads management.
Okay. Amazing. And so when you say the ads manager, you're talking about the actual place where, I mean, it's kind of what it sounds like. It's where you go to manage all the ads that you're running through Meta.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
And there is, I think it's called Meta Business Suite, which might show
Oh,
you some of the general overview of what's going on in ads, but that's not where the meat and potatoes is of how to set up an effective like ad campaign. That's more of like a limited view and capability. And the Meta Business Suite shows you other things as well, but you inside of the Meta Business Suite, there's like menus, and you want to get to the ads manager in particular. And that's where
okay.
you'll start seeing these tabs that we've discussed.
Yeah. Yeah, the Meta Business Suite, that's yeah, it has so many things in there,
Hmm.
including the ads. So
Hmm.
you can do a lot of things within the business suite. And so yeah, and managing your ads is a huge, huge component of that. Um,
Yeah. And so
it,
if you want to like see the complete like setup inside of the business suite, there is like a button to get into the ads manager. And that's what I'd recommend to see like the most like thorough and to have the most capability.
yeah.
Because sometimes in the Meta Business Suite, it allows you to like boost a post or things like
Mhm.
that, or maybe even I don't want to say like I can't don't quote me on this, start a campaign. But the most thorough set of capabilities for ads running and management is actually once you get inside the ads manager.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So then once let's say you've started running your ad, you've got some impressions, right? What is an impression? And then what goes in hand with that is what is a CPM, which is the cost per 1,000 impressions, is my
Yeah,
understanding of it, right?
yeah. So what I would say, what I typically explain impressions as is views, in the sense of like it's like a brief, it can be anything from like a brief scroll by, like as if you're scrolling your feed, or it could have gone through someone's like ad reel. It's just anytime the ad is like made visible to somebody within that Meta network. And that also includes Instagram. So when I'm talking about this, it's Facebook and Instagram feeds. Typically, you can choose where the placements of your ads go. And so that's where the impressions, it's like anywhere your ad is placed, anytime it gets viewed, even if it's for like 3 seconds, typically, that's where it becomes an impression. And so
Okay.
that you start analyzing your CPM ratio is when you're able to kind of know, okay, like how much has my ad already been seen? Because I think impressions are important to understand like your effectiveness of the ad that you have been running. And then if you need to make any tweaks or changes, or maybe or starting something different altogether. And the reason why impressions are like important is sometimes you start running an ad within your campaign, and in the beginning you're like, oh, this doesn't look like it's going well, but it's only been seen by like it's only had and I don't even want to say like seen, it's only had a couple of like blips in the
Hmm.
meta universe. And so that's when you look at the number of impressions. And then the CPM on the flip side of that too is like you want to keep your CPMs lower as a rule, typically, but it's not always like a hard and fast rule. That way, you're getting the most out of your budget. And so looking at these two numbers as kind of like the ratio, because in the beginning, if you're only at like 250 impressions and your CPM is like through the roof, people might panic in the beginning and saying like, whoa, this isn't working. But usually a good rule of thumb is to wait till around like 1,000 impressions and then see where your CPM is at from there.
Okay.
Uh, so that way you have more data to work with.
Hmm.
Sometimes the inverse can happen where you're like, oh, things are looking good. And then as time goes by, it spends a little bit more and you're like, okay, maybe it's not as good as we thought. Maybe we could go a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
So that's impressions and CPM.
So for what does the M stand for in CPM?
That's a good question. I probably am not the person to tell you. I just always in my head say cost per impressions because when you
Yeah.
hover over it, that's what it says.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
they just chose that word. I hate to
Okay.
say,
Okay.
I don't want to like, I don't want to give you a word and then like it's not the word.
That's
But I know
okay.
when you hover over it, it'll say like cost per 1,000 impressions.
Yeah.
Um, and so in my head, I just say cost per impressions when I read CPM.
Yeah, definitely. So, um, I think something that might sound confusing just to a listener who's never, I'm just trying to come at this
Mhm.
from the perspective of someone who's never maybe seen the Meta ad suite or the uh
Mhm.
the campaigns or anything like that. And so when you are talking about your CPM going up,
Mm-hmm.
that's basically the cost of ads. That's where
So,
people start to say
oh,
like, "Oh, ads are expensive." But what you're saying is like, "Well, no, we don't have enough data to know if they're expensive yet."
yes. Yeah. And I would
Mm-hmm.
say that may not always be your first indicator, or that might be not be the first place where someone might say ads are expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, when you're trying to figure out your ad spend, you usually you want to spend about 50% of the item that you're selling, the
Ah.
item, the service. And so sometimes at that point, also individuals might be thinking like, okay, that's a lot, or not. And so once you start running the ads, the CPM is the other thing where I'd say sometimes in the beginning you want to make sure to effectively run ads. And we were talking about, I think we've talked about in the past, like the auction and how some seasons are more expensive, some are not.
Mhm.
You want also like your audience to be broad enough where you're getting the most out of your money and in the time of year. But then also, if you're a local service-based business, there's more nuance to that
Yeah.
because you don't want your audience to be so broad where you're targeting people 3 hours away. And so I'm not saying that people 3 hours away won't come to your business, but that's also not just as effective as targeting people like within your 25-mile radius. And so that's where some of the CPM like nuance comes in. You want to make sure that like as you get your cost per 1,000 impressions, it just looks like you're spending within like a good range.
Okay. And
And
that
it
range should not be more than like 50% of whatever it is you're trying to get in. So, like, if you want more Brazilian clients and your Brazilians cost $80, then you would not want to do more than 40.
typically, yeah, and sometimes people even say to like push it lower depending on like
Mm.
what your offer is. But again, in the beginning, it might be higher as you haven't had even 1,000 impressions yet. And so once you hit around the first 1,000 impressions, that's when you can know, you're like, okay, like this is looking better, or maybe we should run it longer with some tweaks, maybe put in some like
Mm.
different copy, maybe if you're a local based business, your audience is kind of pretty set.
Hmm.
So that's when you start changing and looking more at different metrics like the cost per click. But I would say even more important is the click through rate. And the two click through rate is click through rate all and click through rate link.
Hmm.
And so kind of looking at all of these together as like a story to see like what exactly is happening and where you need to make your adjustments. So I'd say you can't just look at that in a vacuum and say things are expensive.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, that's great. So, can you elaborate a little bit more on a click-through rate? So, there's click-through rate all, and then click-through rate or CTR is what people typically
Hmm.
short-term it for.
Yes.
What was the other one?
Yeah.
CTR
CTR
all
all and CTR uh-huh.
link, and
And
that's
those are
okay.
two separate items. Yeah.
Okay.
And so CPR all is usually in the past when I've said stopping the scroll,
Mhm.
when you're scrolling in your feed, either in Instagram or Facebook, anywhere in Meta, it's the CTR all is what's showing you if people are stopping, and at what rate that's at. And
Oh,
so
okay.
you want to kind of see what that number is. And then in correlation to that, you also want to see your CTR link. And your CTR link, which is short for click through rate link, is if they're kind of, it's indicating a little bit more on how hard your copy is hitting the copy contents that are writing with it. And
Okay.
that's where you're able to say, okay, maybe I can test a little bit more here, or like it seems like they're stopping, but maybe they're not clicking all the way through into like your objective.
Ah, okay.
then or sometimes it could be, I wouldn't say it's the inverse usually because if somebody is like stopping enough to click, they've already stopped like in the scroll for CTR all. So it
Mm-hmm.
kind of tells you the story to know like where we're at and if we need to make the copy stronger or test different copy. And in
Okay.
my opinion, and I've heard this with other individuals who run ads too, you just want to change one thing at a time, let it
Mhm.
run for more impressions, and then usually that's anywhere from like 20 to 48 hours, maybe even a little bit longer, depending on the size of your audience, to see how this data changes, and going from there. And also, this can help you diagnose your funnel, these numbers.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you can, this kind of story shows when you said like cost per lead, CPL is another term.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Typically, with service-based businesses, leads acquisition is the campaign objective.
Mm-hmm.
So, a cost per lead, like that's where we kind of get the ad spend budget out of, and that's kind of like what we're monitoring as well, in proportion to what the ad spend is. And so sometimes all these numbers, we can kind of see maybe if there's like a drop off point somewhere in the
Mm-hmm.
funnel, or if the funnel is too complex for what we're spending, or yeah, just to kind of diagnose issues and then again go one by one and kind of testing and changing a little bit through each. I know I started defining other things through that, so let me know if we
Yeah,
need to
that's
um
okay.
like get into the nitty-gritty of a little bit more of those
Yeah.
individually.
Yeah. I think I do want to go into cost per lead because I think that that is really important, just kind of like the CPM, the cost per impressions. But before we do, can you, I mean, is there such a thing as like a good click-through rate for a spa?
Oh
Or,
yeah.
oh, okay. And okay, so do you know what that is, or would it just depend on the specific ad?
Oh, good question. Typically, it's for service-based businesses, like you're wanting to be, and when I say service-based businesses, that's more of like a local business, meaning like you have like a certain radius that you're targeting, as
Okay.
opposed to like a brand that's selling something nationally. And that could be like
Okay.
a service brand that's selling a service nationally or internationally. But with a service-based business that is offering a local service that somebody needs to come in for, like a spa,
Mm-hmm.
um, so typically local based businesses, or it could be like a pest control service, or it's just something that like a service that somebody has to actually appear for. Usually the click through rate, like link and the click through rate all, you want that to be like around like anywhere, the click through rate all, I'd say like anywhere above 2% is going to be helpful. And then same thing with the click through rate link, same thing about 2%, is probably going to be like your goal. So if it's
Wow.
getting close, that's not bad, but you want it to like, but then you're like, okay, can I ride this out and see if it's, as we get more impressions, is it going to improve? Or did it start off really strong and then our impressions like fizzling, as more
Okay.
impressions come in? And so looking at how many things, how many impressions have occurred, and then looking at those numbers for a local based business, in relation to that tells the story of like, okay, what do we need to improve? And then same thing also talking about the funnel. Those
Mm.
numbers can kind of say like, okay, like if those are okay, if those are okay, but like if we're not getting as many bookings as we thought, do we need to like audit some things in the funnel to make sure that like we're optimizing for ad spend?
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
2% is pretty low. I did not realize it was that low.
Yeah, I'd say 2.5, 3%, anywhere like in that is like when you're starting to know it's like more healthy, and then you're like, okay, like we
Okay.
don't need to change as much. Um,
Okay. Okay. That makes sense.
for for
But
something national, it can be, I'd say a little bit higher, maybe like starting at 3% for click-through rate all, and then
Mm,
click-through rate link is also, I'd say, like maybe slightly higher. But if this is like nowhere in that 1.5%, like if you're below that, then typically you're like, okay, we need to like change some things around and test that for um, another couple of days,
okay.
um,
What
and
would
then
a
go
what
from
would
there.
that tell you that lower than 1.5? What would that bad number tell you?
So it would necessarily not be like bad, just it'd be like, okay, it's not as strong as we thought it would be. And so
Okay.
from there, you don't want to make a ton of changes in your, if say that's a number for your click-through rate link, you don't want to make like a ton of changes. You just want to say like, all right, we know that this is indicative of the copy. And
Mm-hmm.
then from there, like let's change up either the tone or just change up maybe like a couple of lines. A big
Okay.
thing that I like kind of for service-based businesses is calling out your audience by almost by name. So
Mm-hmm.
saying so like if you're in Houston, if you're so you could say like, hey Houston, or like if there's a neighborhood in Houston that you're
Mm-hmm.
targeting. Um, I don't know of any neighborhoods. Like in Miami, I feel like there's Brickell. So you could be like, hey, Brickell, like if that's like part of like the main concentration of your radius,
Mm-hmm.
then you can start like that might help your creative will stop the scroll, but your CTR link will show how that copy might help to like
Okay.
draw people in from that initial stopping of the scroll, like why they continue reading your copy, and then from there they might be able to make a decision. So
Okay.
I find that helps with that link right off the get go. And those numbers are like what I should say is like diagnosing the funnel is the important part because like you don't want it to end up just being like numbers for the sake of numbers. You want to make sure
Okay.
that like you're getting the results as well. And I think that like speaks to like spot like businesses too. Like I know for like massage, like something that to talk about is like you want to make sure that like yeah, like you might think things are going well, but if the client like doesn't think things are going well, then like that's a different that's a
Yeah.
different issue. So yeah, like as long as like that's what these metrics are intending to tell us. But like there's always the chance that like you might have to like pay attention to something or test something a little bit different and then see how the numbers change and tell the story a little bit differently. But
Okay.
that's how all these metrics tell you what could possibly be like the issue and how things could be a little bit stronger.
Okay.
Mhm.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. Okay. I mean, just those alone, I feel like are incredible and so helpful because whether or not the listener is doing the ads themselves or if they've hired someone to do it for them, this
Yes.
will be incredibly helpful.
I think so because I think, like you said, it'll just help familiarize yourself with like what you're looking at, and just so that way it's um, I don't know. I don't know about you, but I just like knowing kind of like what I'm looking at and like what I
Yeah.
want to like um want to help with. But also I understand like what we've talked about, like spot owners are wearing so many different hats.
Hmm.
And so sometimes I understand like why like someone can't necessarily delve like fully into this, but knowing some of these basics might just be helpful to know like, okay, like this is, this is helpful. This is helping my business grow.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's honestly what is most important here is every little thing is just helping the business grow. And to the spot owner listening, you don't have to do it all at once.
Mhm.
You don't have to know everything all at once. This is why we outsource to
Yeah.
people like Pamela and to other estheticians, that might have a specialty or some, whatever it is. It's so that we can hopefully alleviate some of the things on our plates and then be able to focus on what really matters in moving the needle in our business. Um,
Mhm.
so those are all of the terms that I think I would like to just cover today. I think just those by themselves, I know I would have to re-listen to these, and I have had to continuously relearn what these things are because every single time I hear it, I'm in a different headspace and I'm like processing it differently. Maybe I'm looking at my own numbers or I'm learning about it again. And I really like the way that I like the analogies that you give, Pamela, because I never thought of it like a binder, but that it literally looks like a school binder that,
Yeah. And I
when
was like,
you're,
maybe some people might be like, oh no, it doesn't look like a binder. I don't know. I
it
think it does.
totally does. Like with the tabs on the side, absolutely. I mean, their tabs, well, some tabs are on the
Yeah.
side. It depends on how deep you go, but like the tabs at the top, that's
Yeah.
literally what it is. So, that was extremely helpful. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to explain this to our listeners. I think it's going to be really helpful and really insightful. We'll definitely have another episode similar to this where we just continue to talk about the words, the terms, the vocabulary that we're using in this ads world. Because the more you know, the better decisions you can make about your business and the farther it will go and the bigger it'll grow. So, thank you so much, Pamela. And I look forward to seeing you again on the next episode about ads. If you enjoyed this episode, then you'll really enjoy my free training where I show you the exact system I use in my own spa to pay myself more. Head on over to amandaluisaconsulting.com/more to download today. I'll see you next week on the SBA Business Podcast.